I thank all those who have gathered here, and I very much thank our hosts who have received us, and I remember their hospitality when we were here last year, and I remember how I spent my time very pleasant and happily with them last year. I once again feel the same happiness to see them after a long period of interval. Today, I am expected to speak a few important aspects of the symbolism of the scriptures. Since the series of lectures on the same subject has been arranged in different places, and since yesterday we have already covered one aspect of the symbolism, and since every time the audience will be changed and there will be newcomers, it is my duty to give a synopsis for 5 or 10 minutes about what I have told yesterday. We have seen the difference between the scriptures and the other books in the following way. The scriptures are impersonal, whereas other books are personal. Personal means the book has everything to do with the views and the opinions of the author. If a poem is written by a poet, if a drama is written by a dramatist, if a character is described in a story by a story writer, it is the ideas and the opinions of the author we receive from the book, and it is not at all about the original aspect of the character we get. For example, if Shakespeare gives us a character of King Lear or Othello, we get the character of Othello only according to Shakespeare, not according to the original characteristic of Othello himself. Sometimes the author creates imaginary characters, and all the character belongs to the author and no one else. But it is the different with what we call scriptures. The scriptures have nothing to do with the opinions of any author. Even though a scripture is composed by an author. As you know, the Old Testament and the Gospel are composed by many authors, but we don't know even the names of those authors, because authors are not important at all. It is the content that is important, and the author is expected to bring the content without his opinions. This we have discussed yesterday. And another aspect about a book that exists through eternity in nature, which contains the sunrise and the sunset, the splendors of the seasons, and about the creation and the various beings in the creation. It is a book in itself, and it contains only wisdom and intelligent way of doing things. As you observe nature, there are no errors in the works of nature. Always nature behaves in the exact way in which it is expected to behave. The sun cannot rise in the west or south, and the seasons cannot show any different attitudes except their own climate and atmosphere. And the trees show their own behavior of preparing their food from the sun's rays. The seed of every tree produces only that tree and no other tree by mistake. The atom of a substance produces only the atomic number of that substance and not any other. So, nature has no error in its workings, and it is a direct evidence that nature has an intelligent way of doing things, and nature has its own wisdom imbibed in itself, and it commits no errors like the intelligence of the human mind. You see how we human beings make errors many times and always subject to rectification, though we are proud of our human intelligence, though we sometimes feel we are greater than the animals and the plants. So, there are two types of intelligences, individual intelligences and the intelligence of nature. Individual intelligence is only a part of nature's intelligence, and it cannot fully understand the intelligence of nature. Is it possible for the part to understand the whole? Is it possible for the hand to understand you? Similarly, any one individual being a part of the whole intelligence of the nature cannot fully understand how the intelligence of nature works. We can only understand that there is an intelligence that knows better than what we know in nature, and a wisdom which does not change. We are changed in our moods and opinions about others every day, whereas nature is not changed through thousands of years and millions of years till today. Man may develop much science and technology, but man is eating in the same way as he ate millions of years ago, only through the mouth, seeing only through the eye, listening only through the ear. So, the workings of nature are stable or unchanged, though the workings of the intelligence of the individuals change from time to time and produce their own civilizations that change always. So, we have an intelligence in nature which we can call a book, and we have books written by the human beings according to their opinions and understanding. We can very easily differentiate between these two books: the book which is impersonal and the book which is personal. From the impersonal book, there were people who could copy down things as it is. That is, they observed the workings of nature and they copied down. And the result is what we call the scriptures. And since there is only one book which we call nature, there can be only one scripture available to the human beings. But man can never copy that one book completely, but from time to time he can copy some pages from the book of nature. Like that, in the past ages, the people of many nations could copy some portions of the same book in nature, and the result is the scriptures of the various nations which we know today. The Christian has the Gospels, and the pre-Christian had what we call the Old Testament. The Indian had his own Gospels, which are of 3 or 4 different categories, and the ancient Jews had their own scripture. The ancient Egyptians had their own scripture. Like that, all the ancient nations had their own scriptures, which are only parts of the same scripture, copied from the same scripture. I also told you that scriptures have nothing to do with religions. After some time, religious people tried to own these scriptures. The Hindu tries to own the ancient Indian scriptures, and the Christian tries to call the gospel his own scripture. But the truth is, Christ was never a Christian, and the Hindu God was never a Hindu, because the world teacher or the prophet who comes down again and again to earth comes into different nations and into different forms, giving the same light, which is essentially part of the scripture, and he cannot be owned by any religion. But religions are formed after the names of these great people. So the scriptures are different from what we call religions. The scriptures are books of eternal wisdom, and whenever you care to go into them, you will get only the truths of nature and man. There is no place of the individual opinions in the scriptures. We may like them or we may not like them, but they live. We begin to like them when our good days begin, when we want to have the real path for happiness, when we are lucky enough to hit at the correct path, the day comes and the happy hour strikes, and we will have a call in the mind that we should go into the scriptures and to know what there is. Then the path will be shown to the individual, and whenever the individual wants a path, it is there in any one of these scriptures. The path is only one. The scripture is only one. And the various scriptures of the various nations form some pages of the same scripture. And yesterday we tried to understand how the scriptures have their own language, their own symbols, which are different from the technical man-made symbols. For example, the sunrise and sunset form their symbols. The cycles of the years form their symbols. The shape of the human body forms their symbol to understand the mysteries of God. The one miracle which we call life, which no doctor can give you and no human father can give you unless God gives, and no biologist can explain you what life is. That life forms a part of the symbol of the scriptures. Through these symbols, we are expected to read the one book. Half of the book is placed at some place and half of the book is at some other place. That means you, the reader, will be half of the book, and the whole creation without yourself forms the other half of the book. What you call subjectivity becomes half of the volume. What you call objectivity forms the other half. This is one aspect which is common in the symbolism of the scriptures. Begin to know thyself, read yourself, and you will know what is there in others. That is the way how we are expected to start the reading of the scriptures. Then the medical student may tell us, I have read everything in my body. There are the bones, the muscles and the nerves. There is the blood, the heart and the lungs. I have studied everything. But that is not how we have to study according to the scriptures. What you have studied is not yourself, though it belongs to you. It is called what is called yours and not yourself. Your head is not yourself because it belongs to you. Your muscles belong to you, therefore you are not your muscles. Your mind belongs to you, therefore you are not your mind. Your intelligence belongs to you, therefore you are not your intelligence. Whatever you know objectively which is different from yourself, it cannot be yourself. because you are able to observe it different from yourself. All these put together are called something yours. You can say, this is my head. You can't believe I am my head. You can say, this is my body. This body is mine. You can't say, this body is I am. Same thing with the mind also. You can say, this mind is mine. He is a fool who says, I am the mind. You can say, this intelligence is mine. But he is a fool who says that I am my intelligence. Nothing mine can be I am myself. But everything that is mine is part of myself, coming from the real I am in you. But nothing belongs to the real I am in you. The real I am is the pure I am, which is no one of these things. Therefore, if a medical man tells you that he has seen himself or he has seen you, it is not in the true scientific sense. Only in the medical sense he has seen you, but not in the sense of the scripture. When he sees from the point of view of the scripture, he should see who he is at first. He should know the I am at first, different from mine in the body. The I am is the purest light in everyone. No one can possess it because he is itself. When you are something, you cannot possess it. All other things are different from you. Therefore, you can possess them. You can own them. You can purchase them. Or you can explain them. You can think about them. You can define them. But you cannot define yourself. That is what you call I am in you. And the scriptures make us understand correctly. That is, the same I am is existing in all these bodies, instead of each one existing as a little I am in every body. Before making an approach to one of the scriptures, people may believe that everyone is separately a little I am in his own body, just as the mineral water in every bottle is understood as a different water. But suppose all these bottles are thrown in the river and the water is flowing into the bottles. The bottles are in the river and the river is in all the bottles. Then only one can understand that one river is flowing through all these bottles. Previously, when you see the bottle in the shop or magazine, you can think that each bottle is having different water in it. But when you once go to the river and see how all the bottles contain the same water when immersed in the river, then you will understand all our bodies are like the bottles. And the one I am is filling and flowing through all these bottles. About that one I am, these scriptures teach us how God taught the name I am to Moses, how God said the name of the one God is I am that I am, how Jesus Christ has said, I am the way, I am life, I am resurrection, how he said, come to me, I am here to redeem you all. This mystic language will be understood, and the I am who lives in everyone will not only be understood but experienced by everyone, and that is what we call the living Christ or the living experience. Instead of talking something about Christ living differently from Christ, we begin to live what Christ is. That is what happens when we read the Old Testament or the Gospel. If you take any Upanishad, which is part of the scripture, every Upanishad says, I am that I am, and asks you to meditate upon that mantra, not with closed eyes, but with eyes open towards our fellow beings, and while doing something useful to others, meditate upon the one I am that pervades in all. And the Upanishads explain the I am in many ways. One Upanishad says, I am seeing through the eye cannot see me. I am listening through the ear cannot listen to me. I am speaking through the mouth cannot speak me. I am thinking through the mind cannot think of me. And then the Upanishad asks us to meditate upon these mantras. When you go to any one of the Vedic texts, it says, I am the light brilliant, the self-luminous brilliance, the fire that shines always, the fire that requires no fuel, the fire that shines eternally, the fire that forms the center and circumference. The center is what you call the I am in your body, and the circumference is what you call your environment around you. The environment which includes other people around you. Like this, all the scriptures in the world, they speak of only one light. The Veda calls this light Agni, which means the fire. And it explains how the one fire becomes three fires. And it explains differently about the different aspects of the three fires. Then we have to know something about the symbolism the scriptures present us, and we are to know the alphabet of how to read these scriptures. Otherwise, we believe that there are some peculiar stories in the scriptures. But always the secrets of the scriptures are given in stories and parables. You remember how Jesus Christ told us, I speak out in story and parable. Because that is the only scientific way of making us understand. It is most unscientific to intellectualize these truths and make them more and more technical and present them with great difficulty to the readers. Truths always exist in the form of the lives of living beings, and therefore the scriptures give us in the form of the stories of living beings. This is what we could understand in yesterday's lecture. And now today we will take up one aspect of the symbolism of the scriptures. Now, there is a conversation in one of the scriptures. The disciple asks the teacher, what was there before this creation was there? Then the teacher says, everything was there as it is now here, but you are not there. That is what is called the absence of creation. What does this conversation teach us? The conversation teaches us a great truth that is concealed in the talkings. That is, what we call the absence of creation is possible only as our own absence. because the absence of living beings is not at all the absence of creation. So, there is something wrong in our way of understanding things. We should understand that our understanding has existence and non-existence. Sometimes it is existing and sometimes it is not existing. Sometimes our understanding is there and sometimes our understanding is absent. The absence of our understanding is what we call the absence of creation. And when we observe this creation, we think that it is there from such and such a date. Some people believed that the creation was there since 40,000 years. And some people believed that it was there from some 50 lakh millions of years. And the geologists give some date, the archaeologists give some dates, the historians give some dates, but they miss the main thing. That is, there is no absence of creation any time. There may be the beginning of one creation and the ending of one creation. Just as there is no possibility of no human being living on this earth unless man kills himself through global war. When things are left to natural course, when man has the kindness not to kill man in the name of war, you can see that there is no time where man does not exist on this earth after man made his first appearance. Men are born and men are dying, but man exists. You see how in the shop where fruits are sold, you always, every day you will see fruits, but fruits are coming into the shop and being sold from the shop. If it is the same fruits that are kept in the shop, they will go spoiled. But throughout the year you can find fruits in the shop, but not the same fruits. In the same way, on this earth, there are human beings always, though not the same human bodies. Similarly, there are creations always, millions and millions, though one creation comes into existence and goes after its span of life. This truth is concealed in the conversation. And the teacher says that the total absence of this creation is only possible when you are absent. Then the disciple asks, can I experience it? Then the teacher says, you have experienced it many times till now, but you have not understood. How? The disciple asks. By sleeping, the teacher says. You are all the while sleeping in the class. That means whenever you are sleeping, there is your absence in the creation. Your room is existing while you are sleeping. Your wife is existing, your children are existing, and your heart is beating, your lungs are respiring. Nothing is absent except yourself, the fool who sleeps. Then the disciple begins to understand how to approach, how to make an approach to the problem and understand the solution. There is a very delicate way of approaching the problem and getting the solution. The absence of one creation and the existence of another creation is there. You find millions and millions of stars shining in space. Each is a solar system just like our solar system, having its own sun as its